Good morning. Open your Bibles, if you would, to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. 2 Chronicles chapter 20. What an incredibly rich blessing to sing together. The worship that we enjoy still continues to be here in this place as in other places around the world today. A place that moves me and encourages me. And I appreciate those who every week they prayerfully pick out songs and they ask for the Lord to guide them in the selection of the songs. And I love the balance, or maybe the difference, that there are songs we sing that are new to me, and it makes me focus on the message because I'm not familiar with it. Or maybe I don't even know what the next slide is going to say, and so I'm kind of a part of the story as we sing it. Then there are other songs that I have sung as long as I can remember, and there's something rich about that heritage of singing those songs. We focus on the power, or at least often we focus on the power of music. God has made us to be musical creatures. We have always, since the beginning of time, we have always looked for an opportunity to make music. Even those of us that are least talented will beat on the steering wheel of our car while we're driving. It's something we respond to, and God in His creation not only has given it to humanity, but He's placed it in other parts of His creation. There are birds that sing and animals that sing. I had an incredible, rare blessing to be scuba diving while a pod of whales went by and they were singing. I didn't realize till later that it is the males who sing, and I thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. But it was incredible to be in the water. I didn't see them, I could just hear them, and the sound was coming from everywhere, like I was swimming in the music, not just water. Music has a profound effect on us. It can excite us, it can calm us, it can stir up emotion. What a gift. I have noticed, however, that some of us, as we sing, could use a little tuning. So I'm going to give you some helpful tuning advice this morning as we continue in our conversation. Whether you sing the high parts or whether you sing the low parts, I think there's some tuning advice the Scriptures would share with us that would help us all. My favorite worship experience, my current favorite worship experience in the Bible is this one in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. I'm just going to reference it. I've talked about it several times. But it's a time when Jehoshaphat in Israel is surrounded and he is literally frightened because the foreign army that's invading is vastly superior and they honestly have no chance. But in a great chapter, just mark that, put your ribbon there, go home and be blessed by this chapter this week. Jehoshaphat cries out to God in prayer, and he calls all the nation to pray, and they will say in their prayer, "We don't know what to do, God, but our eyes are upon you." And then in God's response, this incredible response, so powerful and so important that when we don't know what to do, when our eyes are looking to God, when we're truly frightened, here's what God tells them to do. You take your armies and you go to the place where the army's coming, and I want you to stand there, but the army's going to just stand because I will fight for you. This isn't your fight. This is my fight, and I will take care of you. And then he tells them, I want you to take the singers, the song leaders, the worship leaders, whichever phrase you would like to use, those that lead Israel in worship, I want you to take them and I want you to put them in front of the army. So the only thing standing between the army of Israel being decimated and this overwhelming army is just a few singers. And that gets us to verse 21 of 2 Chronicles 20. When he had consulted with the people, he appointed those who sang to the Lord and those who praised him in holy attire, and they went out before the army. And he said, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his loving kindness is everlasting." What I love about this passage is the timing. We love to sing when we sing in celebration. When we're able to say, God has done everything well, when we're saying that, look how richly we've been blessed, then that's so much fun to sing during that time. But that's not where they're at. They're called to sing a song with a message that is yet to be fulfilled, that God's kindness is everlasting. In their dire hour of need, they're about to die on the battlefield, unarmed with nothing but a song. And he says, here's your song. If I'd have been picking the song, I would have sung what we sang a few minutes ago. I would have been singing, let God arise. Let God arise, because his enemies, they'll run for sure soon, quickly, right? That'd have been my song selection. How about you? I can keep singing. I can make this worse if I need to, okay? There's a reason that I do this and he does that, okay? But they get in front and they sing this song that God's loving kindness is everlasting. And look at the timing in verse 22. When they began singing and praising, the Lord set ambushes against those that were opposed to them. When? It's not until they begin to sing this song, and they're going to have to sing it in faith. So I talked to you about a little bit of tuning. I don't know if you sing the high part, middle parts, or the lower parts, but let me help tune your ear just a little bit. That'll help you stay on pitch. That when you have fear, sing with faith. When you have fear in your life, sing. Sing with faith. Sing about the Lord's characteristics, his attributes. Sing about him, that he is loving, that he is faithful for all time. Because it may be the battlefield that requires the song. To sing in faith when you struggle with fear. Turn to the 5th Psalm, Psalm number 5, the very 5th Psalm. Just turn to the right a little bit. The 5th Psalm. Now, this is a common expression. David was a great warrior and a mighty king, but it's interesting that he began as a shepherd and as a singing poet. Not normally the background you look for when you're trying to find a mighty warrior. But David's successes were successes in the Lord, and he's a man who sings. And so this is all through the Psalms. Here's just a sample in the 5th Psalm in the 11th verse. He says, but let all who take refuge in you be glad. All those who see their place of safety, their place of strength in the Lord. He says, be glad. Let them sing, let them ever sing for joy. And may you shelter them, that those who love your name may exult in you, for it is you who blesses the righteous man, O Lord. You surround him with favor as with a shield. When you're fearful, sing in faith. And when you're in need of protection, David says, sing with joy. Joy is the expression that all is well. We sing an amazing song. We didn't sing it today, but we sing an amazing song of joy. One of my favorites, one of the classics. We sing a song called, It Is Well With My Soul. There's another song that we sing, it's also a little bit older. We sing peace, perfect peace. See, sometimes when we think about singing, we have we're just a little out of tune. And the idea is, we should come and it should be upbeat and we should be excited and it should be up-tempo and that's all great. Well, yes, sometimes. But there's also times to sing songs that are slower. There's times to lament. There's songs for mourning. That beautiful little song in terms of its size, Peace, Perfect Peace, has such a low and slow and such a haunting melody and such a powerful message. When we sing, It Is Well With My Soul, it's sung in a time of struggle, not just in a time of celebration, and that's why it's joy. There are songs of happiness, absolutely. Times when they're toe-tapping and we're excited about it, enthusiastic about the day, then let us sing. But it's also important to sing when we can barely breathe. It's also important to sing when our minds are so burdened, all we can do is hum because we can't even think of the words. It's not just a gift that God gave us, it is an avenue and a connection. Now, I don't understand the power of singing. I've mentioned already how our emotions can be stirred and how we can be moved by it and brought to tears and smiles put on our faces. But it's not uncommon as we're new as Christians and we begin to gather as the church and we begin to hear songs. One, we can feel kind of uncomfortable because, I don't know these songs. Well, that's natural. It comes in time. But sometimes it's like, man, all these people are singing. Because we don't do that much in our everyday world. But it's not just that we don't know the song or that it's an unfamiliar practice. I'm saying there's something intensely spiritual about singing. And I don't know how to explain it, but I think you know what I mean. Just as a test, is there anybody going to Rosa's after worship today? Oh, that's right. This is Sunday morning. That's Sunday night and Wednesday nights. Okay. Do me a favor. I tell you what, do it in a restaurant, it'd be better because drive-through speakers are kind of scratchy and they don't appreciate the full quality of your voice, right? So at the restaurant today, is anybody going to a restaurant today? Okay. Raise your hand if you're not going to raise your hand no matter what I say. Let me just, okay, all right. Thanks for all the help this morning. I really appreciate it. Do me a favor when you get to your table, and it's your choice if you want to leave the mask on or take the mask off because muffling it might be an improvement. I don't know. But when the server comes to your table, do me this favor, just sing your order. Right? I'm not asking you to change the content. I'm not asking you to be a songwriter. When they come, just say, I'd like a glass of unsweet tea with a little lemon. And can we have some more chips? Just do that. That's all I'm asking. So the amazing thing is that you can communicate the exact same content, right? And they're going to tie you up and haul you out in the back alley because they're going to be worried about you, right? You're going to be like, what's wrong with that person? That is so weird. Somehow, when we sing, we are sharing more. We are connecting. That's why it makes us uncomfortable. That's why it's a freaky thing if it's not the right context. There's something incredibly spiritual that happens when we sing. Now, we can sing content that isn't spiritual, sure. But in the exercise of it, there's something unique that happens. What would David sing when he says, for all those who take refuge in you, be glad, let them ever sing for joy? Maybe they're singing that song, sing and be happy. If the skies above you are gray. We sing and be happy because we have joy in spite of the context, and we're expressing that. Whether the skies are gray, whether the skies are blue, or whether the skies are brownish on some days, we're going to sing and be happy. You recognize that those folks in Chronicles and David, they're singing songs that they know. They're community songs. I don't know exactly what all they would sing, but I know that we do. Turn, if you would, to Matthew chapter 26. This may be one of the most helpful passages on tuning your singing so it sounds good. There's nothing worse than being off pitch. Here's a verse that might really help us tune our singing to be always on pitch, might I even dare say, to be pitch perfect. In Matthew chapter 26, Jesus has washed the disciples' feet as you read all four Gospels. They are sharing their last Passover meal together, as our brother Tim read from that same event just a few moments ago. In verse 26, he's instituting that very thing, and he's talking to them about how this cup is his blood and the bread is his body. It's a time of tremendous teaching. Jesus, when you read in the Gospel of John, really lays some incredibly significant, important things on the disciples. It's been raw because it started with Jesus trying to wash Peter's feet. He's like, oh, no, you can't do that. And then Jesus says, I've got to wash you if you're going to be clean. It's a time when Jesus says that the one who dips his bread in the bowl with me is the one who betrays me. And Judas and Jesus have that moment of conviction. It's a time when Jesus is literally sharing his final moments of fellowship with his disciples in the shadow of the cross. For when he leaves this context, he'll be heading to the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's where he will pray, and his soul will be grieved to the point of death, and he'll sweat as drops of blood, and he'll pray, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me, but not my will be done, but yours. It's when he'll be arrested, betrayed by Judas with a kiss of a friend. And then he will be tried, and then he will be scourged, and then he'll be crucified. All of that is looming over this moment in Matthew chapter 26. When they finish up this time of fellowship, this time of worship, and they're going to transition to the garden, which is going to begin these final moments that leads to the cross. Look what Jesus does. It's just a short little verse. Verse 30. After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. I wonder what the song was. I don't know. Often, very often, the Jews sang one of the Psalms, and I'd be curious which psalm they sang, but I wonder if he had our songbook, if this would not have been the time to say, "It is well with my soul." When peace like a river. This would be the time to sing a song that's communicating how it's about to get really hard. In the shadow of the cross, there's this moment of singing that seems to represent this moment of surrender. For Jesus will say, it is well with my soul. What he said was, if possible, let this cup pass from me, but not my will be done, but yours, which can also, I think, be sung with saying it is well. Let's talk about pitch. So there's 11 disciples. Judas has already left. There's 11 disciples in Jesus, so there's 12 men. I wonder how good it sounds. Well, I know that 4 of them, at least, are professional fishermen, which means they couldn't make a living on stage. So I wonder about their harmony. Now, from what I read, I understand that first century singing is not what we would call singing. We would probably hear it and go, whoa, what's wrong? Did somebody slam their hand in the door? What happened? Because it's more likely to be very chant-ish and not have really a whole lot of harmony or melody, and certainly not a lot of harmony necessarily. There are times when I hear my brothers or my sisters talk about, oh, you don't want to sit by me because you'll hear me singing. Okay. What's wrong with that? Well, I don't have the best voice. That's when we're out of pitch. Is when we're focused on how it sounds in terms of quality. I think we're off pitch. The best singers I've heard are those who sing with reckless abandon. Years ago, there was a particular member who had some difficulties in life, and his ability to function on the mental level was pretty severely impaired. And sometimes he would get so stirred up during the song service. He usually had, as kind of a comfort, he would wad up a piece of paper and he would bounce it in his hand. I guess it was sort of calming or soothing for him. But there are times when he would start singing and he would get so incredibly loud. And the first few times, or visitors at first come, they're like, what is that? And you look over and then you see his face. And then you conclude, that's real singing. Wow. Because he's singing to his Lord with the voice that God gave him and with the ears that God gave him. we would be incredibly out of tune if all we hear is simply and only the harmony. It's powerful. It moves us. It's part of it. But I wonder what it sounded like to hear 12 guys sing all by themselves in verse 30. Probably pretty average, I would assume. But think about how incredibly important and moving that song was for what was going to happen next. To sing a song of surrender in the shadow of the cross. Turn, if you would, to the book of Hebrews. We sing when we're fearful. We sing when we're joyful. We sing when we're burdened. The Hebrew writer says in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 15, "Through him then let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips that give thanks to his name. And do not neglect doing good and sharing, for with such sacrifices God is pleased." The Hebrew writer says this is a part of what we sacrifice. This is a gift that we're given to him. Since he created our voices and he created our ears, then he knows the kind of gift he's going to get. It's about sharing something that is absolutely holy with one another and with our Creator. Turn finally, if you would, to Ephesians chapter 5. It always makes me smile, and it made me smile this morning to hear voices of my brothers and sisters behind me or beside me and know that I am singing with them. And that they too are sharing this same message that I'm sharing. That we're looking up together, whether we're using our psalm books or we're looking up on the wall, and we're communicating this message in an intimate and powerful way. It's unique. I gave you the restaurant example. We could just do it in Bible class. It wouldn't be near as crazy. What we could do is ask those that teach our Bible classes, write out your notes, and then just sing it. And then we could say, if you have a comment in class, raise your hand and bust it out in song. And you know it's the same content, but something different, something special. And I want to tell you something holy happens when we sing. In Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 15, Paul says, "Therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil. So then, don't be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine, for that is dissipation." Now, why would people ever choose to get drunk with wine? I'm sure there are numerous reasons. But one of the most common reasons is we will often turn to alcohol to numb ourselves or to put away something that we need to deal with or can't deal with. It's not the only way that we practice escapism. There are other methods, for sure. But one of the reasons that we might turn to some sort of alcohol is so that we can go numb. And what's interesting is Paul says that's dissipation. Some translations say debauchery, but it's the word that describes what the prodigal son does. You know, that's the young man that was given all of this treasure and all of his possessions, and what does he do with it? He squanders it. It dissipates, it fades away, it evaporates. Paul says life's going to be hard and it's going to require focus. So don't turn to wine, and we can argue other things also. We could also insert ice cream or the internet or anything else you want to put in there. Don't turn to those things to try to make yourself go numb, because your life will dissipate. Joy, peace, the very gifts that God has for us will erode. So by contrast, rather than turning away and trying to numb yourself somehow or distract yourself somehow, he says, do not get drunk with wine, for that is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Rather than turning towards something so I can kind of just not deal with it, he says, open yourself up to the Spirit. Invite God's presence in your life. Ask Him to fill you and to lead you and to strengthen you. Be filled with the Spirit. Sounds good, Paul. How do I do that? What are you talking about? What would that look like? He says, I'm glad you asked. Keep reading. Look at the very next statement. Be filled with the Spirit. What does that mean? Verse 19, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Different kinds of songs like we have today. We have I'm going to call them the classics. You can always tell a classic because there's 4 verses and it starts with thou, right? Classics. They've been around a long time for a reason because they're strong in message and in melody. And then there's some, we can call them the newer songs if you want to. Songs that have a different sound to them and they have the same deep message presented in a different way. And maybe even there's other songs that we can sing that we might call them simpler songs. Often when I grew up, we called them youth group songs. They were simpler, didn't require as much in terms of singing. It was better for smaller groups. Okay. Same thing here. Look, he says there's hymns, there's psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Likely the psalms are the psalms. Those are very formal written songs that they would have grown up with. This is their heritage. They've been singing it for generations. Hymns are going to be those kinds of songs that have a theological focus. Probably heavier, probably deeper. And then there's spiritual songs. They may not be so complicated, but they're just as powerful. Like if we sang, God is so good, God is so good. You can learn that song because it's the same words all the way through the first verse. But tell me that's not a deep message. Tell me that's not the same message as it is well with my soul, God is so good. Right? Different words, obviously different music, a different kind of song. One of the things that fascinates me is apparently when you look through Christian history, that when you see an outbreak of new songs, it's nearly always the herald of revival. I think it's because people start singing. The way that we are filled with the Spirit is this communication with one another. This is something we can do alone, absolutely, and we can thump on our steering wheel, we can roll down the windows, and we can praise God. But it's also the context of we do this together because this is the one another part. When we get comfortable singing with each other and to each other, then we have an ability to really begin to communicate to each other. If I ever get to design an auditorium, it's going to be a circle. And in the middle, there's going to be one of those, I don't know if you've ever seen those communion tables. They're usually in smaller churches. It's a communion table that's also a baptismal combined because they have a lack of space. So you walk up to the communion table and 2 guys lift the lid and they pull it off and it's a tub inside and then they baptize somebody and then they put the lid on after they get the person out. Have you seen those kinds of things? Now, it'd make me nervous to have to preach that way because some of y'all be behind me and that'd make me nervous with some of you. But there's 2 things I love about the idea of us sitting in a circle. Number 1, there's no back row. Have you thought of that? But number 2, we're looking at each other when we sing. It's powerful. Paul says, sing to one another, making melody with your heart to the Lord. It's a kind of communication. It's a sharing of the heart that is absolutely unique. This is just one of the reasons why we value the way we sing and why it's simple and why it's a cappella and why it's our voices, because we don't want to get anything between the hearts connecting and singing to each other. It's unique. It's intimate. It's powerful. And in that singing, he says in verse 20, always giving thanks for all things. That's why you're going to sing when you're afraid. That's how you're going to sing when you are joyful. That's how you're going to sing when you are burdened. That's how you're going to sing when you're overwhelmed, because we're going to give thanks for all things in our singing. That's why some songs are going to be toe-tapping, up-tempo, God is good, this day is great. And then some songs are going to be, we're struggling to get through it because it's hard to sing and cry at the same time. That's all things, brothers and sisters. And that's why I wish we could see each other more. I wish we could see the faces beaming with joy, like those who are up front can see that. The faces that are beaming with joy and the faces that have tears running down. All of us singing at the same time. experiencing all of that. That's why we sing. That's why singing is so essential. That's why singing to one another, that's why being here and singing together is so essential. For to be cut off from that is to be isolated from the most powerful interpersonal relational thing we do together in our worship. In just a moment, we're going to sing to one another. And Jason and those wherever that you are around the world, as you choose songs, they choose a song intending for it to encourage us. Because they know here's the moment where we've spent this time worshiping. We've listened to the Word of God. This part was good. Whatever the guy said, take that, leave that. But this is the good part. And we realize that there is a possibility that someone's heart's been stirred and they're needing help. And so if you're that person today and you're trying to decide, is this the day that I ask my brothers and sisters to pray for me? Is this the day that I finally surrender and give my life to Christ and accept that He's Lord and King and be baptized into Christ that I might be resurrected in His life? If this is that morning, I want to tell you what we're about to do. I'm going to invite everybody in just a moment to stand, and we're going to do that so it makes it easier for you to move. But we're also going to sing. And we're going to sing to each other this song, these words of encouragement to lift you up. That whatever you're carrying, wherever you're struggling, you've got an entire family who is singing to you. One of the pre-COVID customs that I miss is singing happy birthday to somebody while they sat in front of their cake. I never thought before how disgusting it must truly be to eat a piece of cake that somebody's been singing over. And then we have a worse tradition than that. We put a bunch of flammable material on the top of the cake. And we say to that person, make a wish and then blow it out. And what do? And then we slice it and serve it. Well, that's family. We all got the same stuff anyway. Amen? And that's what we do when we sing to one another. So if we can encourage you, we're going to sing just to you and just for you as together we stand and sing.